Hello, so welcome to another Friday artwork video. This week I'm going to flip through this Graveborn deck. It's an all foil deck, it's part of the premium deck series. Now one note I want to make, I made a mistake, bit of a mistake last week, like a chronological error. So I think I might have mistakenly said that the deck I featured last week, which was the Fire and Lightning deck, was the first deck of the premium deck series. It wasn't. That was actually the first deck I bought of the series. So I bought the Fire and Lightning deck when it came out, the Graveborn deck when it came out, and then subsequently I realised there was a Slivers deck, and I found one languishing in a game store somewhere, because it was funny at that time. I don't think that deck sold particularly well, and it wasn't really until Commander took off that people started getting hold of that deck. I'm assuming for foil copies of certain slivers, and so it was interesting. The only one that I was aware of at the time that was really flying off the shelves was actually this one, the Graveborn deck, at least local to me, and that was because it contained a lot of. There were some reprints in here that were of interest to people that were playing Eternal formats at the time. So I'd heard stories of people buying like multiple copies of this deck because it was actually fairly reasonably priced. So we're going to do like we've done in the previous week. I'll flip through this zoomed out so you can see the full card, and then we'll go through, zoom in, I'll go through the individual artwork, taking out the duplicate copies. I'll also, if I have it, because I don't know how many of these I did unboxings for, but if I do have an original unboxing for this, I'll include it as a link. Now next week, if I haven't already mentioned it, rather than doing the Slivers deck, I'm gonna just switch to doing a Torment theme deck, because that's going to line up with the fact I'll be covering Torment in both deck musings and the Commander Fodder episode. So yeah, next week we'll switch back to a theme deck, and then the following week we'll take a look at the Slivers deck. So I have the box still. So yeah, this sort of shiny skull motif box, and I do have the insert. So there's a regular one in there, which was your how to play Magic thing, but there's also this, which is probably of more interest. So similar to the one from last week. Oops. So it's interesting because in this one it's got like a history of reanimated decks. That's the type of deck I was trying to think of as well. So people were using this to get multiple copies of cards for their reanimator decks. At least, like I say, local to me. There's the actual deck listing. Let me just fold this over a bit so you can see it. Again, it has this really nice feature where it's got the card and then the printings, the notable printings. So if you're interested in tracking the set down, you can do that, which I used to find really fascinating, to see where stuff was coming from, and was there a common theme present in that particular set that lines up with the utility of the card. So, and of course how to play the deck. Now with these premium decks, if I didn't mention it last week, you'll notice there's often quite a lot of one-offs in these decks. It just, I suppose, makes it more fun, increases the variance where you've got that, and I suppose does make the play a little bit closer to like a Highlander format. There can be only one, like singleton, however you want to refer to it. So we'll start off with the higher rarity stuff, the creatures, and then move down the rarities. So you can see here we've got Croesus, the Purger, so blue, back, red. We've got Sphinx of the Steel Wind, which is white, blue, black. We've got a Terrestodon. You'll notice these are all foil. This this particular deck I didn't try to straighten out. The cards are a little bit curved, but not as bad as they were for the deck last week, where I had to put some heavy books on it. We've got Avatar of Woe. Now you'll probably notice already these cards have very high casting costs. And of course the idea with these reanimation type decks is to find a way of getting those in the graveyard and then cheating them out so you don't end up paying for the full cost. I mean, you can hard cast these, and we'll see whether that is even possible in this deck, because of course with some of these you know, you're in a position with where, well, if I can get it out using another card, do I even need to make sure I have sufficient colours of mana to be able to cast that on turn? That sort of goes out the window. It's not like we're playing, you know, Commander or EDH where, you know, we have to have cards that are in the colour identity. Strictly, you know, we could have, as we go through, we might find that there's actually no, I don't know, white mana in here or blue or green mana or something like that, but we'll see as we go through. I've literally only just reordered I reordered these last week and I've sort of forgotten. So there was Entomb, and we've got Hidden Horror. So a couple of copies of that. And so keep your eyes out. I won't specifically point it out, but you know, clearly you can see there's cards here that are going to facilitate putting stuff into the graveyard, and then cards that are going to facilitate getting stuff out of the graveyard. You can see we've got a number of copies of Animate Dead here. So what was that? Was that actually 4 there, I think, nearly? Yeah, no, 3 of those. So Zombie Infestation. So you'll see there might be cards in here as well that are getting you to discard cards into from your hand into the graveyard. And Diabolic Servitude. That was a card we looked at quite recently. There's a Reanimate. Called Cabal Therapy. Sickening Dreams. A couple of copies of that. Buried Alive. Another copy is Dread Return. And another one. We've got a Putrid Imp, so we're getting down to the lower rarity stuff here. There's a couple of copies of them. Faceless Butcher. You might notice as well there's creatures here that facilitate getting other things in and out of the graveyard as well. Twisted Abomination. So, lower rarity utility cards at common. We've got Duress. So this is interesting. The target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. That player discards a card. So obviously there's ways of in here of dealing with your opponent, of disrupting your opponent. So multiple copies of that. We've got an Exhume in here. Each player puts a creature card from his or her graveyard onto the battlefield. In fact, so 3 copies of that. Got a Last Rites. of which there are a couple of copies. And then looking at our mana base, here we've got this crystal vein turning up. And as we were looking at that, one thing I wanted to check. So you might also have noticed that cards like Animate Dead enchant a creature card in a graveyard. So that could be any graveyard. So that's another thing, you know, that cards that are causing your opponents to selectively discard cards. You know, you obviously want to pick something nice and juicy that you could steal from the graveyard. Ebian Stronghold. Interesting because it's you know, it's similar to if you know, these some cards we were featuring in deck musings where you tap for mana and then you sack them and you get either different mana or extra mana. So this is one where you're getting extra mana. Polluted Mire, which is cycling. And then we have some swamps. And I will go through nice and close the artwork for this because I know there's a number of people like me that really appreciate land artwork. So yeah, don't worry that I'm flipping through these a little bit quick, but it does give me the opportunity to just see, you know, the little different subtle effects you get when you sort of look at light on the foiling. So here we go. So yeah, multiple artwork, multiple times. So, what have you noticed? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. There is actually only, well, apart from the fact that Crystal Vein generates colourless mana, everything else generates black mana. So there's no way in the deck of actually hard casting quite a number of these creatures. And that's the point, because you're not trying to hard cast them. You're trying to cheat them in through graveyard shenanigans. So let's actually get up to the up close artwork. That's a really, it's funny, isn't it? That, okay, so on camera, just because of the light, I don't know if you can see that, at a certain angle, that border down here looks green. That is not green, that's actually slightly darker gold, but just under the light, it's turning green. Okay, so there's our Crosis. So yeah, all of these cards ain't going to be casted. Apart from obviously the possibility with the mono black ones like Avatar of Woe, you could hard cast that. That's an older card, Verdant Force. But of course, in this setup, there's just so much big stuff that you've got to choose from, where you don't have to really worry about the mana in the casting cost. And we have Entomb. So got some lower or a lower casting creature there. Here I'll animate Dead, which has the rather wordy text on it. So yeah, quite a number of older cards in here that maybe hadn't been printed in, quite possibly been printed in Magic for quite a while. There's Zombie Infestation. We have a Diabolic Servitude. Reanimate itself. Sickening Dreams. And we got Buried Alive. Dread Return. Okay, so something that is castable. Putrid Imp. Also, nicely fits in, has Threshold, so it's fitting in with the theme of our Deck Musings theme deck, which is one of the reasons why I chose that particular theme deck as well. I try and sync a lot of this stuff up if I can, have some commonalities. Faceless Butcher. And Twisted Abomination. Now, if you remember from the first go through of this deck, there were 3 duresses. And I'd mentioned about this because, you know, this is getting the target opponent to reveal their hand and then choose a non-creature non-land card spell from it. That player discards that card. So I'd made a bit of a mistake there actually, because I was implying that, you know, that might be you might be able to use that, you know, get that, steal that in some way. But of course, Animate Dead is specifically creatures. So yeah, my mistake. But certainly Animate Dead will be able to steal creatures that got into an opponent's graveyard from combat damage. And we got other things which are much more asymmetrical, like the Exhume. Now moving on to our non-basic lands and basic lands. It's interesting, there's no higher rarity non-basics in this deck. Right, so let's have a look at each of the artwork for the basic lands. Skipping over the duplicates. So you've got the first one there, and then we'll move on to the next piece of artwork. And next. And I think that's the final piece, yeah. But yeah, very nice artwork. So there we've had it. Habits. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. Yeah, it'd be interesting to obviously have a look at the Torment theme deck next week, because again, that I suspect is going to be possibly another, graveyardy deck, but we'll see when we get to it. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.